The ship moved slowly through the darkness of space. Its name was Horizon's Edge, and it carried the hopes of all humanity inside its metal walls. Stood at the window and watched the station grow bigger and bigger. Station 7. A place where many species came to trade and talk. A place controlled by creatures that made humans look like children. Was not tall, she was not strong. Her body was small and her hands were soft, but her eyes were sharp and her mind was sharper. She had studied alien species for 10 years. She knew how they moved, how they thought, how they breathed. And now she was going to meet the... There were wolves that walked like men. They stood 9 feet tall with thick fur and claws that could cut through metal. They had ruled 3-star systems by being the strongest, the fastest, the most deadly. Every species in the galaxy feared them. Every species respected them. And now humanity wanted to trade with them. Walked up beside her. He was taller than, with kind eyes and a worried face. He was a language expert. He could speak 47 alien languages, and he had learned in just 3 months. But right now he looked scared. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. Did not turn from the window. "No," she said, "but I am going anyway. They asked for you specifically, a female, the smallest member of our team." His voice was tight. "You know why, right? They want to test us by our weakest. That is how they think." "I know. And that does not bother you." Finally turned to look at him. A small smile touched her lips. "They have never met a human woman. They think small means weak. They think soft means prey." Her smile grew wider. "Let them think that." The ship docked with a loud sound of metal touching metal. The doors opened slowly and cold air rushed in. It smelled like iron and something wild, something animal. Took a deep breath and stepped forward. The docking bay was huge. The ceiling was so high that could not see the top. Strange lights hung everywhere, glowing blue and purple, and standing in the center of the bay were There were 12 of them. Each one was massive, covered in fur of different colors. Black, brown, silver. Their eyes glowed like fire. Their teeth were long and sharp. They wore armor made of bone and metal, and weapons hung from their belts. They looked like monsters from old Earth stories. They looked like nightmares given flesh. And in the front stood the biggest one of all. He was 9 feet tall, maybe more. His fur was silver and black mixed together like smoke and shadow. His eyes were gold, bright and burning. Scars covered his face and arms, each one a story of battle and blood. He looked at like she was an insect, like she was nothing. This was the Alpha. So, his voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "This is what humanity sends to meet us. A small soft thing with no claws, no fangs, no fur." He laughed, and his warriors laughed with him. "Tell me, little, do your people have no warriors, no fighters, or did they send you because they do not care about this meeting?" Stood very still. She did not shake. She did not look away. She met those golden eyes and held them. "My people sent me because I am the best person for this job," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "Size is not everything, Alpha." Leaned down, his face came close to hers. She could smell his breath, hot and sharp. She could see every scar, every tooth, every strand of fur. He was trying to scare her. He was trying to make her run. She did not move. "Brave words," growled, "but words are wind. Let us see if your actions match your tongue." He stood back up and turned to his warriors. They began to walk away, and the human team followed, walked beside her, eyes watching everything. She noticed how they moved, how they looked at each other, how they touched shoulders and bumped heads, pack behavior, dominance signals, submission gestures. She read them like a book. And then she saw something else. Behind the warriors, hiding in the shadows, was a small shape, a cub, but this cub was different from the adults. It was thin, too thin. Its fur was dull and patchy. One of its legs was bent wrong and it walked with a limp. Its eyes were not gold like the others. They were pale yellow, almost white. The cub was sick. The cub was weak. And from the way the other ignored it, knew what that meant. Among the weak were nothing. The weak were abandoned. The weak were left to die. Felt something twist in her chest. Not fear, something else, something hot and sharp. They walked through long hallways and tall doors until they reached a great room. It was filled with strange plants and soft seats and tables covered with food. This was the meeting place. This was where humanity would try to make peace with wolves. Sat on a raised platform, looking down at everyone. His warriors stood around him like a wall of fur and teeth, and her team sat on lower seats, forced to look up at the Alpha. "Let us speak plainly," said. "Your species is new to the stars. You have no power. You have no weapons that can match ours. You have no strength that matters." He showed his teeth in something that was not a smile. "Why should the trade with prey?" Translated quickly, though had understood every word. She had learned more than anyone knew. "We offer knowledge," said. "Technology, medicine, things your people do not have." "We take what we need," replied. "We do not trade for it." "Then why did you agree to meet with us?" The room went quiet. Eyes narrowed. No one spoke to an alpha like that. No prey creature asked such questions. "Because," said slowly, "I wanted to see what humans were made of. I wanted to see if you were worth anything at all." He stood up and his shadow fell over like a dark cloud. "And now I have seen. You are small. You are soft. You are nothing." Stood up too. She was so small next to him, so fragile, but she stood anyway. "Then test us," she said. "If you think we are nothing, prove it. Give us a chance to show you what humans can do." Stared at her for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. It was a terrible sound, deep and cruel. "Very well, little, you want a chance." He raised his clawed hand high. "I give you the challenge of dominance. 3 trials, strength, cunning, will. Pass them and humanity earns the right to trade. Fail them and your species will be marked as prey forever. No will ever deal with you. You will be hunted, not respected." The other howled in approval. The sound shook the walls. Did not flinch. She did not look away. She simply nodded once. "I accept." In the shadows behind the warriors, the sick little cub watched with wide, pale eyes. It had never seen anything like this before. It had never seen prey stand up to an alpha. And somewhere deep in its young heart, something that had been dying began to glow again. Something like hope. The news spread through Station 7 like fire through dry grass. A human had accepted the challenge of dominance. A small human female had looked an alpha in the eyes and said yes. By morning, every species on the station knew. By afternoon, they were all coming to watch. The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest room on the station. It was built 1,000 years ago, when the first claimed this place as their own. The ceiling was painted with stars and moons. The walls were carved with images of great hunts and ancient battles, and the floor was stained dark with old blood. 12 different species had sent representatives to watch. There were the tall and thin with skin like blue glass. There were the round and soft with too many eyes. There were the covered in hard shells and clicking sounds, and many more, all sitting in their sections, all watching, all waiting. They had seen this before. They had seen other species try to prove themselves to they had seen them fail. They had seen them break. Some had died in the trials. Some had run away in shame. None had ever won. And now a human was going to try. Walked into the hall with beside her. She wore simple clothes, dark and plain. She carried no weapons. She wore no armor. She looked like a child walking into a room full of giants. The other species whispered and pointed. Some laughed. Some shook their heads. A representative leaned over to his companion and said, "This will be quick. Perhaps we will be home by dinner." Sat on his throne at the far end of the hall. His warriors stood in rows on either side of him. They were all watching with hungry eyes. Behind them, hiding in a small gap between 2 guards, the sick cub watched too. "You came," said. His voice echoed through the hall. "I thought perhaps you would run during the night. Many do." "I do not run," replied. Then you are either very brave or very stupid. Stood up. Let me explain what you have agreed to, little human, so there is no confusion, so you cannot say later that you did not understand. He walked down from his throne, each step heavy and loud. He stopped in front of and looked down at her like she was something he might step on. The challenge of dominance has 3 trials. The first is the trial of strength. You will be given a task that requires power. You must complete it or you fail. The second is the trial of cunning. You will face a hunter in a maze of traps and shadows. You must survive and escape or you fail. The third is the trial of will. You will stand before me and face the Alpha's roar. You must not break, not kneel, not fall, or you fail. He showed his teeth. If you fail any trial, humanity is done. Your species will be prey forever. We will take what we want from your worlds. We will hunt your people for sport. You will be nothing. Grab's arm, his face was white with fear. He whispered, please think about this. The trial of will alone has killed dozens of challengers. The Alpha's roar can break minds. It can stop hearts. You cannot survive this. Gently removed his hand. Watch me, she said quietly. She looked up at, I understand the rules, I accept them. Good, turned to face the crowd. Then let all who watch know this. The human called has accepted the challenge of dominance. If she fails, humanity falls. If she wins, he laughed. But she will not win. No prey has ever won. The howled, the sound filled the hall like thunder. The other species covered their ears. Some of them looked sick. Some of them looked excited. Stood in the middle of it all, calm and still like a stone in a river. When the noise died down, she spoke again. Her voice was not loud, but somehow everyone heard it. I have a question. His eyes narrowed, you may ask. Pointed to the shadows behind his warriors, to the small shape hiding there, to the sick cub with the pale eyes and the broken leg. What happens to that one? Every head turned, every eye looked. The cub tried to hide deeper in the shadows, but it was too late. Everyone had seen it. His face twisted with something that might have been shame or anger. It was hard to tell. That is none of your concern, he growled. I am curious, pressed. Among my people we care for our sick, we protect our weak. What do they do? The hall was very quiet now. The other species leaned forward. This was not how challengers usually behaved. This was not how prey talked to predators. His claws came out long and sharp and gleaming. The weak are useless, he said. His voice was cold and hard. They cannot hunt, they cannot fight, they cannot serve the pack, so they are left behind. They are forgotten. It is the way of nature. It is the way of strength. He pointed at the cub. That thing is my blood, my child, but it was born wrong. It cannot run. It cannot hunt. It is nothing but a mouth to feed and a shame to carry. His golden eyes burned with something dark. When the time comes, it will be abandoned, as all weak things should be. Looked at the cub. Its pale eyes were wet with tears. It was trying not to cry. Its thin body was shaking. It had heard these words before. It had heard them many times, but hearing them in front of everyone, in front of all these strangers, was different. It was worse. Something in his heart went hard and cold, like ice, like steel. She turned back to, her face showed nothing, but her eyes had changed. They were not soft anymore. I see, she said quietly. Then let us begin the trials. That night could not sleep. She sat in her small room on the human ship and stared at the wall, came to check on her. He brought food that she did not eat and water that she did not drink. Tell me, he said, sitting down across from her. Tell me why you really accepted this challenge. It is not just about trade agreements. I know you better than that. Was quiet for a long time. Then she began to speak. When I was 7 years old, our colony was attacked. Raiders came from the outer systems. They burned everything. They killed everyone they could find. Her voice was flat and empty. My parents hid me in a broken wall. They told me to stay quiet. They told me to stay still. Then they went out to fight and they never came back. Said nothing, he just listened. I stayed in that wall for 3 days. No food, no water, just the sounds of fire and screaming, and when it was finally quiet, I crawled out. Looked at her hands, small hands, soft hands. I was the only one left. A rescue ship found me 2 weeks later. I had survived by eating bugs and drinking rain. I was 7 years old and I had to bury my own parents. People told me I was lucky. Lucky to be small enough to hide. Lucky to be overlooked, lucky to survive. She laughed, but there was no joy in it. But I was not lucky. I was just too stubborn to die. And I learned something in that broken wall. I learned that the universe does not care about small things. It does not protect them. It does not save them. She stood up and walked to the window. The stars burned cold and distant outside. But I do, she said. I protect small things. I save them because no one saved me. She turned to look at. That cub has no one. Its own father wants to throw it away. Its own pack thinks it is worthless, just like those raiders thought I was worthless, just like everyone thought I was worthless. Her eyes were bright now, burning with something fierce. I am going to win these trials, not for humanity, not for trade routes, not for politics. She smiled, and it was sharp as a blade. I am going to win because I want to look that alpha in the eyes and show him what weakness really means. I want to show him that the things he throws away are worth more than all his strength and all his claws and all his power. Stared at her. He had known for 5 years. He thought he understood her. But now, for the first time, he saw something else behind her calm face. Something hard, something unbreakable. Something human. The trials start at dawn, he said finally. You should try to rest. Shook her head. No, I should prepare. She sat down and closed her eyes. I have a wolf to beat. The arena of 7 was old, older than the station itself. It had been built by when they first came to this part of space, carved from a single piece of black stone that floated in the emptiness between stars. The floor was smooth from 1,000 years of feet and paws and claws. The walls were marked with the names of those who had fought here. Most of those names belonged to the dead. Stood at the entrance and looked up at the crowds. Every seat was full. Thousands of eyes watched her from above, and a dozen other species, all waiting to see the small human fail. Stood on a raised platform at the far end of the arena. His warriors surrounded him like a forest of fur and teeth. His golden eyes never left. The first trial begins now. His voice boomed through the arena. The trial of strength. The ground in the center of the arena began to move. Stone slid against stone, and something rose up from below. A pillar. It was made of the same black rock as the arena itself, but it was huge. 20 feet tall and so thick that could not have wrapped her arms around it. It must have weighed more than a starship. Your task is simple, said. There was laughter in his voice. Move the pillar from where it stands to the white circle on the other side of the arena. You have 1 hour. If you cannot do this, you fail. The white circle was far away, very far, and the pillar was so heavy that even a would struggle to move it. The crowd laughed. Some of them pointed at and made jokes. A clicked its shell and said something that made its companions shake with amusement. They all knew what was going to happen. The small human would push and pull and struggle, and the pillar would not move. Not even a little. And then she would give up, and it would all be over. Walked toward the pillar. She did not hurry. She did not run. She walked slowly, looking at the floor, looking at the pillar, looking at everything around her. The arena floor was old, very old, and old floors had secrets. She reached the pillar and touched it with her hand. Cold, smooth, heavy beyond measure. There was no way a human could move this with simple strength. Everyone knew that. But was not thinking about strength. She was thinking about something else. She got down on her knees and looked at the floor very carefully. The stone was smooth, yes, but not perfectly smooth. There were grooves, tiny channels cut into the rock. They were almost invisible, worn down by time and feet, but they were there. And they led in a specific direction. Toward the white circle. Smiled. She stood up and walked around the arena, looking at the walls. In one corner she found what she was looking for: old tools left behind from ancient times, covered in dust and forgotten by everyone. But one of them was useful: a metal rod, long and strong with a flat end. A lever carried the rod back to the pillar. The crowd watched in confusion. What was the small human doing? Why was she not pushing? Why was she not even trying? She found a small crack in the floor near the base of the pillar. She pushed the flat end of the rod into the crack. Then she leaned her whole body against the other end. Nothing happened. The crowd laughed again. The howled with amusement, shook his head slowly like a parent watching a foolish child. But did not stop. She adjusted her angle. She found a better position for her feet. She took a deep breath and pushed again. This time there was a sound, a grinding, scraping sound. The pillar moved, just a tiny bit, just a few inches, but it moved. The laughter stopped. Pushed again, and again, and again. Each time the pillar moved a little more. It was not rolling. It was sliding along those ancient grooves, following a path that had been cut into the floor 1,000 years ago. A path that someone had made for exactly this purpose. The who built this arena knew something. They knew that true strength was not just muscle and bone. True strength was also thinking, planning, understanding. The crowd was silent now. Every eye watched as the small human woman pushed the massive pillar across the floor. It was slow. It was hard. Sweat ran down her face and her arms shook with effort. But she did not stop. She never stopped. 40 minutes later, the pillar reached the white circle. Stepped back, her whole body was tired. Her hands were raw and red, but she was smiling. The arena was completely quiet. Then from somewhere in the crowd, someone began to clap. A single pair of hands, then another, then more. Soon the whole arena was filled with the sound of applause, not from everyone else, from all the species who had come to watch a human fail and instead watched her succeed. His face was like stone. His golden eyes burned with something that might have been anger, or surprise, or both. "The first trial is complete," he said. His voice was stiff. "The human passes." Looked up at him and bowed her head slightly, not in submission, in acknowledgement, like two warriors who respected each other. The second trial began 3 hours later, the trial of cunning. They took to a different part of the arena. A door opened in the wall, revealing darkness beyond. This was the labyrinth, a maze of corridors and rooms and traps that changed every time someone entered. And somewhere in that darkness, a hunter was waiting. "The rules are simple," explained. "Survive, escape. The hunter will track you. If he catches you, you fail. If you find the exit before he catches you, you pass." Looked at the darkness. "What kind of traps?" "All kinds," showed his teeth. "The maze was built to test warriors. It has spikes and pits and poison and blades. It has heat and cold and things that will make you see what is not there. No one has ever escaped without injury. Most do not escape at all." "And the hunter?" A warrior stepped forward. He was not as big as, but he was faster looking. Lean and sharp like a knife made of muscle and fur. His eyes were red, not gold. A trained killer, a professional hunter. "Has never failed to catch his prey," said. "He has hunted creatures on 100 worlds. He has killed things that would make your blood freeze. You cannot outrun him, you cannot outfight him. You can only try to outsmart him." He laughed. "And prey does not outsmart predators." He looked back at her with those red eyes. Hungry eyes, eager eyes. "How much time before he enters?" she asked. 100 heartbeats, then the hunt begins." Nodded, she turned toward the dark entrance. Then she paused and looked back over her shoulder. "Among my people," she said quietly, "there is a saying. The rabbit does not need to be faster than the wolf. It only needs to be faster than the wolf expects." She walked into the darkness. The maze was worse than she had imagined. The corridors twisted and turned in ways that made no sense. The walls moved when she was not looking, and the traps were everywhere. She found the first one quickly, a wire stretched across the path at ankle height. It would have cut her feet off if she had not been paying attention. She did not try to avoid it. Instead, she memorized where it was. Then she moved on. More traps, a pit hidden under a false floor, blades that shot out from the walls when you stepped on certain stones, gas that made your eyes burn and your mind see strange things. Found each one. She memorized each one. She left small marks on the walls so she would remember. Then she heard him, moving through the maze behind her, fast, so fast, getting closer with every heartbeat. Most prey would run. Most prey would try to escape, try to reach the exit before the hunter caught them, but was not most prey. She stopped running, she turned around, and she went back the way she came. Was confused, he could smell her, he could hear her heartbeat, but the scent was going in strange directions, back and forth, around and around. It made no sense. Prey did not double back, prey did not run toward danger. He turned a corner and found her standing there, just standing, waiting. "What are you doing?" he growled. "Are you surrendering?" Smiled, "No, I am giving you a chance to surrender." Laughed and leaped at her. Stepped to the side, flew past her and landed on a stone that she had carefully avoided earlier. The blades shot out from the walls. Screamed, the blades did not kill him. They were not meant to kill, but they cut his legs deep and painful. He fell to the ground, bleeding and shocked. Walked past him. "The rabbit does not need to fight the wolf," she said. "It only needs to let the wolf fight itself." She found the exit 20 minutes later. She was not injured, not even a scratch. When she emerged into the light, the arena was silent again. Limped out behind her, held up by two other. His face was twisted with shame and pain. Looked up at "Two down," she said, "one to go." Stared at her for a long moment. His golden eyes were unreadable, but somewhere deep inside them, something had changed. Something that looked almost like respect. "Rest tonight, human," he said finally. "Tomorrow you face the trial of will. Tomorrow you face me." His voice dropped low and dangerous. "And I promise you there are no tricks that will save you from what comes next." Bowed her head again. "I look forward to it." As she walked away, she passed by the shadows where the sick cub was hiding. She slowed down just for a moment. Her hand reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of food, a ration bar from her ship. She dropped it near the shadow. She did not look at the cub, she did not say anything, she just kept walking. Behind her the cub crept forward. Its pale eyes watched her go. Its small paw reached out and took the food. And for the first time in its short, sad life, someone had been kind to it. The night before the final trial, dreamed of wolves. They were chasing her through endless darkness. Their eyes glowed like fire. Their teeth were sharp as knives. She ran and ran, but her legs were heavy and slow. The wolves got closer. Their breath was hot on her neck. Their claws reached for her back. And then she stopped running. She turned around, she faced the wolves, and she smiled. The wolves froze. They did not understand. Prey was supposed to run. Prey was supposed to be afraid. But this small creature was not running. This small creature was not afraid. Woke up with the sun. Her heart was calm. Her mind was clear. Today was the day. Today everything would be decided. Was waiting outside her door. He looked like he had not slept at all. His eyes were red and his hands were shaking. "You do not have to do this," he said. "We can find another way. We can negotiate. We can." "No," his voice was gentle but firm. "This is the only way. If I back down now, humanity loses everything. Not just trade, not just respect, everything." She put her hand on his shoulder. "Trust me, I know what I am doing." "Do you?" His voice cracked. "The trial of will has killed challengers, strong challengers, challengers. The alpha's roar is not just sound, it is power. It reaches into your mind and crushes it. It finds your deepest fears and makes them real. It breaks you from the inside." I know. Then how can you be so calm? Smiled, it was a strange smile, sad and strong at the same time, because I have already been broken many times and I am still here. She started walking toward the arena. The think breaking is the end. They do not understand that for humans, breaking is just the beginning. The central ring was the oldest part of the arena of 7. It was where alphas had proven their dominance for 1,000 years. The floor was marked with ancient symbols. The walls were covered with the names of every alpha who had ever stood here. And in the center was a circle of white stone, worn smooth by countless feet and paws. This was where champions were made. This was where challengers were destroyed. The crowd was even bigger today. Word had spread across the station, across the sector, across the stars. A human had passed 2 trials. A prey creature had done what no one thought possible. Now everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Would she complete the impossible, or would she finally fall? Walked into the ring alone. She wore the same simple clothes as before. She carried nothing. She had no weapons, no armor, no protection of any kind. She looked small and fragile standing in that ancient circle. She looked like a leaf about to be blown away by a storm. Entered from the other side. He had changed his armor. It was darker now, covered with the bones of creatures he had killed. His silver-black fur seemed to glow in the strange light of the ring. He looked like a god of war. He looked like death itself. "You have surprised me, human," he said. His voice was quiet, but everyone heard it. "I did not think you would make it this far. I did not think any prey could do what you have done." He stopped a few feet away from her. Up close, he was even more massive, even more terrifying. But this is where it ends. The trial of will cannot be tricked. It cannot be outsmarted. It is pure power against pure will. And your will, little human, is nothing compared to mine. Looked up at him, "Then show me." The crowd went silent. Every breath stopped. Every eye watched. His golden eyes began to glow brighter. His whole body seemed to grow larger, darker, more terrible. The air around him became heavy and thick. It pressed down on everything, crushing, suffocating. And then he opened his mouth. The alpha's roar was not just sound. It was force. It was pressure. It was a wave of pure dominance that crashed into like a wall of stone. It pushed into her mind, searching for weakness, searching for fear, searching for anything it could grab and twist and break. His knees buckled. She caught herself before she fell, but just barely. Her head felt like it was being squeezed by giant hands. Her vision went white, then red, then black. She could hear voices in the roar, cruel voices, mocking voices. "You are nothing, you are weak, you are prey, give up, fall down, submit." Blood ran from her nose. Her hands shook. Her whole body trembled like a leaf in a hurricane. But she did not kneel. She thought of the colony, the fire, the screaming, the darkness of that broken wall where she had hidden while her parents died. She thought of the 3 days she had spent alone, hungry and scared and sure she was going to die. She had survived that. She could survive this. Pushed harder. The roar grew louder, stronger, more terrible. The air itself seemed to scream. Some of the weaker species in the crowd fainted. Others fled, unable to bear the pressure even from a distance. His vision was almost gone now. She could barely see in front of her. She could barely feel her own body. Everything was pain and pressure and the terrible, crushing weight of his will. But somewhere in the middle of all that darkness she found something. A small, bright spark, a memory. The sick cub, its pale eyes, its thin body, its broken leg. The way it had looked at her when she dropped the food, the hope in its face. The desperate, fragile hope that someone somewhere might actually care. She thought of all the small things, all the weak things, all the forgotten things that the universe threw away and stepped on and left behind. She thought of herself at 7 years old, alone in a broken wall, waiting for someone to save her. No one had saved her then, but she had saved herself, and now she would save others. She took a step forward. His eyes widened. This was impossible. No one moved forward during the alpha's roar. No one could, the pressure was too great, the power was too strong. But took another step, and another. Her body was screaming at her to stop. Her mind was telling her to fall. Every instinct she had was begging her to give up, to submit, to let it end. She kept walking, step by step, inch by inch, through the storm of power and pain and fear, through the crushing weight of a predator's will, through everything the universe could throw at her. She stopped inches from his face. She looked up into his golden eyes. Blood covered her lips. Tears ran down her cheeks. Her whole body was shaking so hard she could barely stand. And she smiled. "You think will is about not falling," she said. Her voice was quiet, but in the silence of the arena everyone heard it. But humans learned something different. Will is about getting back up, every single time. His roar faltered. His eyes flickered with something he had never felt before. Doubt, confusion, and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. "I have been broken," continued. "I have been crushed. I have been left for dead, and I am still here, still standing, still fighting." She raised her chin. "Your roar cannot break what has already been broken and rebuilt. Your power cannot crush what has already learned to rise from nothing." She reached up with one bloody, trembling hand and touched his chest, right over his heart. "That is human will, Alpha. That is what you call weakness, and it is stronger than anything you have ever known." Stared at her. The roar died away. The pressure lifted. The arena was completely silent. And then from the shadows behind the warriors, a small shape burst free. The sick cub, the runt, the forgotten one. It ran across the ring on its broken leg, ignoring the pain, ignoring the stares, ignoring everything except the small human woman standing in the center. It reached and pressed its head against her leg, nuzzling her, choosing her. The crowd gasped. The warriors made sounds of shock and anger. By their law, by their ancient tradition, a cub choosing another was the ultimate sign of an alpha's weakness. It meant the alpha had failed. It meant the alpha was not worthy of loyalty. But did not look at the crowd. She did not look at the warriors. She looked down at the small, sick, trembling cub that had chosen her. And she knelt down, slowly and gently, and wrapped her arms around it. "It is okay," she whispered. "I see you, I see you." The cub made a small sound. Not a growl, not a howl, something softer, something that sounded almost like crying. Looked at the human woman holding his child. He looked at his warriors, waiting for his command. He looked at the crowd, watching to see what he would do. And for the first time in his life, the alpha of the did not know what to do. The arena was frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to stop, waiting to see what would happen next. Knelt on the ancient stone floor with the sick cub in her arms. She could feel its thin body shaking. She could feel its heart beating fast against her chest. It was so small, so fragile, so afraid. Just like she had been once. The elders rose from their seats. There were 5 of them, ancient wolves with fur and cold eyes. They had ruled alongside alphas for generations. They kept the old laws. They enforced the old ways. "This is unacceptable," the oldest one growled. His name was, and his voice was like stones grinding together. "The cub has betrayed its alpha. It has chosen a prey creature over its own father. By ancient law, both must be punished." The other elders nodded. The warriors shifted, their hands moving toward their weapons. The crowd murmured with excitement and fear. Stood very still. His golden eyes were fixed on and the cub. His face showed nothing. But inside something was happening. Something was changing. He remembered when the cub was born. He remembered holding it for the first time, so small and warm in his arms. He remembered the joy he had felt. And then he remembered the healer's words. "The cub is broken. It will never hunt. It will never fight. It is useless." He had believed those words. He had accepted them. He had pushed his own child away because that was what alphas did. That was what strong leaders did. The weak were abandoned. The broken were forgotten. It was the way. But now, watching this small human woman hold his child with such gentleness, such care, he wondered, was it really the way, or was it just an excuse, a reason to avoid the hard work of caring for something fragile? Alpha's voice cut through the silence. The law is clear. The cub must be cast out, and the human has violated our sacred trial by accepting its submission. She must be punished as well. Looked up, her face was calm, but her eyes were fierce. I did not ask the cub to come to me. It chose to come. Is that not what your trial measures? Choice, will. Silence, pray, another elder snapped. You do not speak in this hall. She will speak. Everyone turned, had moved. He was walking toward the cub. His steps were slow and heavy, echoing through the silent arena. The elders exchanged glances. Alpha, the law. I know the law, stopped in front of. He looked down at her, at the cub pressed against her chest. His golden eyes were unreadable. I know all of our laws. I have followed them my whole life. I have enforced them without mercy. He knelt down, slowly, carefully, until his face was level with. But perhaps, he said quietly, some laws are wrong. The arena exploded with noise. The elders shouted in protest. The warriors growled with confusion. The crowd buzzed with shock and excitement. Ignored them all. He reached out with one massive clawed hand and touched the cub's head. The cub flinched at first, then went still. It had never been touched gently by its father before. It had never been touched at all. You asked me what happens to the weak among our pack, said Tu. I told you they are abandoned. I told you it is the way of nature. He paused. His voice dropped even lower. But you showed me something different. You showed me that the small can be strong. The soft can be hard. The prey can become the hunter. He looked at his child, really looked at it, saw the fear in its pale eyes, saw the hope, saw the desperate need to be loved, to be wanted, to be seen. I have been a fool, he said, a blind, stubborn fool. He stood up and turned to face the elders. His voice rose, powerful and commanding. The human has completed all 3 trials. She has proven her strength, her cunning, and her will. By our own laws, she has won the challenge of dominance. But the cub started. The cub is mine. His voice was like thunder. It carries my blood. It is part of my pack. And from this day forward it is under my protection. Anyone who threatens it threatens me. The elders went silent. Challenging an alpha's decision about his own blood was dangerous. Even they were not willing to push that far. Turned back to, he reached into his armor and pulled out something small, a pendant. It was made from a single tooth, long and sharp and white, a fang. This is a symbol of pack debt, he said. It means you have done something for the pack that cannot be repaid with words or gold. You have shown us a truth we did not want to see. You have taught us that there are other forms of strength. He held out the pendant. I give this to you of humanity. You are now pack friend to you and your people. Took the pendant with trembling hands. She had won. Against all odds, against all expectations, she had won. But as she looked down at the cub still pressed against her, she knew that the pendant was not the real victory. The real victory was something much smaller and much more important. The trade agreements were signed the next day. Humanity gained access to space, to their technology, to their knowledge. It was a historic moment. Reporters from 100 worlds came to document it. Leaders sent messages of congratulation. Everyone talked about the small human woman who had done the impossible, but did not care about any of that. She spent her last hours on the station with the cub. They sat together in a quiet garden, watching alien flowers bloom in strange colors. The cub had not left her side since the trial. It followed her everywhere, like a shadow made of fur and pale eyes. You will be okay, told it. Your father sees you now, he will protect you. The cub made a soft sound. It pressed its head against her hand. I have to go back to my people, continued. But I will return, I promise. And when I do, I want to see you strong and healthy. Can you do that for me? The cub looked up at her. Its pale eyes were still sad, but there was something else in them now. Something that had not been there before. Hope. 3 years passed. Ambassador returned to space on a diplomatic mission. Her ship docked at Station 7, the same station where everything had begun. She walked down the ramp with beside her, both of them older now, both of them changed by time and experience. A delegation was waiting for them. Warriors in ceremonial armor, elders in flowing robes, and at the front, standing tall and proud, was a young unlike any had ever seen. This was not as big as the others. Its build was leaner, lighter. Its fur was patchy in places, showing old scars, and one of its legs was slightly crooked, bent wrong from an old injury that had never fully healed. But its eyes were bright, golden now, not pale, full of life and fire and purpose. It wore the armor of a diplomat, the first ever trained to speak for their people instead of fight for them, the first ever chosen for words instead of claws. It saw, and its face broke into something that looked almost like a smile. Ambassador, it said, its voice was smooth and practiced. Welcome back to space. I'm honored to greet you. Stared, her eyes grew wet. Her heart felt too big for her chest. You have grown, she whispered. The young stepped forward. It knelt down, just as its father had done 3 years ago, and it pressed its head against his hand, just as it had done when it was a sick, frightened cub hiding in the shadows. I am who I am because of you, it said. You saw me when no one else did. You believed in me when everyone else threw me away. It looked up at her with those bright golden eyes. My name is Kin now, child of. It is the name I chose for myself to honor the one who saved me. Could not speak. Tears ran down her face. She knelt down and wrapped her arms around the young, just as she had done all those years ago. I am so proud of you, she whispered, so proud. The crowd watched in silence, and humans and a dozen other species. They saw the small human woman holding the young diplomat. They saw two creatures from different worlds, different species, different everything, connected by something stronger than blood or law or tradition. Connected by kindness, by hope, by the simple act of seeing someone who was invisible and saying, "You matter." That night at the celebration dinner stood up to make a speech. He was older now too, more in his fur, more lines around his golden eyes, but he was still the alpha, still strong, still proud. 3 years ago, he said, a human came to our station. She was small and soft and everything we thought was weak. She accepted a challenge that should have destroyed her. She faced trials that should have broken her, and she won. He looked seated at the place of honor beside his child. But her greatest victory was not the trials. It was not the trade agreements. It was not even proving that humans were worthy of respect. He paused. Her greatest victory was teaching an old wolf that he had forgotten how to love his own cub. The hall was silent. The galaxy learned something that day, continued. Something that humanity has always known. True strength is not measured in fangs or claws. It is not measured in muscle or speed or the ability to kill. He raised his cup high. True strength is measured in the lives you lift up when no one else will, the broken things you choose to mend, the small things you choose to see. He looked out at the crowd, at all the species gathered together. Humanity taught us that. A small human woman with no claws and no fangs and no armor. She taught the greatest predators in the galaxy what strength really means. He drank, everyone drank. And somewhere in that great hall, sitting beside the woman who had saved his life, Kin smiled. The cub who was thrown away had become the bridge between two peoples. The weakness they mocked had become the strength they celebrated. And the small human woman who knelt in the dust to comfort a frightened child had become the most honored guest in history. Because that was the human way. That was the power of kindness. And that was how prey became pack.